Okay, so before we even start, let me just say that everyone is completely overreacting about this whole situation. Like, massively overreacting. I made one tiny comment, one harmless little joke that literally came out wrong because I'd had a few drinks, and suddenly I'm public enemy number one. Please, if people can't handle a little honesty mixed with alcohol and humor, then maybe they're the problem, not me. But fine, fine. Since everyone wants to paint me as the villain in this story, let me tell you exactly what happened from my perspective, from the beginning, so you can see how absolutely insane and disproportionate their reaction was. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand that I was joking, that I didn't mean anything by it, and that what they did to me was borderline abusive. So buckle up, because this is the story of how one drunken comment at a family dinner destroyed my entire life, and how my husband's family turned against me like I'd committed murder instead of making an off-color joke. And for the record, since I know what you're all thinking, I didn't cheat, I never cheated. This was one comment, one single sentence that came out of my mouth after 3 glasses of wine. That's it. But apparently in this family, that's enough to get you kicked out of your own house by your mother-in-law. Yeah, you read that right. My mother-in-law packed my bags, herself, while my husband stood there and watched. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning so you can understand the full context of this absolute nightmare. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. So my husband's name is Derek. He's 34, works in accounting, makes decent money, decent looking in that average forgettable kind of way. Brown hair, brown eyes, 5'10", slight dad bod, even though we don't have kids. He's fine, he's nice, he's stable. He's exactly the kind of guy your parents tell you to marry because he's responsible and reliable. And then there's his brother, Tyler. Tyler is 37, 3 years older than Derek, and he's different. He's 6'2", kept himself in shape, has this whole rugged outdoorsy thing going on with the beard and the flannel shirts and the broad shoulders. He's a contractor, builds custom furniture, has this whole artisan craftsman vibe that women go crazy for. You know the type, looks like he stepped out of a lumberjack calendar, probably smells like wood shavings and masculinity. When I first met Derek 6 years ago, I actually met both brothers at the same time. It was at a mutual friend's barbecue. Tyler was there with his girlfriend at the time, some blonde yoga instructor who looked like she'd never eaten carbs in her life. Derek was there alone, awkwardly holding a beer by the grill, clearly the less confident of the two. And I'll be honest, when I first saw them together, my eyes went to Tyler first. Of course they did. Everyone's eyes went to Tyler first. He has that kind of presence, that magnetic thing that makes you notice him in a room. But Tyler was taken, and Derek was sweet. He came up to me, introduced himself, made self-deprecating jokes, asked about my life, actually listened to my answers. He was kind, attentive, safe. And I thought, you know what? This is the guy you marry. Not the flashy older brother with the girlfriend of the month. The steady, reliable one who'll actually stick around. So I chose Derek. I dated Derek. I fell in love with Derek, or at least I convinced myself I did. He proposed after 2 years, gave me a decent ring, planned a nice wedding. His family welcomed me with open arms. His mum, Carol, treated me like a daughter. Tyler and his girlfriend, different girlfriend by then, were friendly and supportive. Everything was fine, good, normal. But here's the thing nobody wants to admit, the thing everyone pretends isn't true. Sometimes you wonder. Sometimes you look at the road not taken and you think, what if? It's human nature. It doesn't mean you don't love your partner. It just means you're curious. You're honest with yourself about the choices you made. And over the years, especially at family gatherings, I'd see Tyler. I'd see how he'd aged, better than Derek, who'd put on weight and lost some hair, and developed this permanent tired look from staring at spreadsheets all day. Meanwhile, Tyler looked like he'd stepped off a fitness magazine cover, all tan and muscular from working outside, laugh lines around his eyes that somehow made him look distinguished instead of old. And, yeah, sometimes I thought about it. Sometimes I wondered what it would have been like if I'd met Tyler first, if he'd been the single one at that barbecue instead of Derek. But I never said anything. I never acted on it. I just thought about it, privately, in my own head where thoughts are allowed to exist without hurting anyone. Until last week, when 3 glasses of wine and 1 family dinner turned my private thoughts into public humiliation. So last Tuesday, we went to Carol's house for dinner. This wasn't anything special or formal, just a regular family dinner that Carol likes to host every few weeks. Derek, me, Tyler, Carol, and Derek's dad Bill, who mostly just nods and eats and doesn't say much. Carol had made pot roast, which is her specialty, and she'd opened a couple bottles of wine. Good wine too, not the cheap stuff. Some red blend that Bill had picked up from a winery trip they'd taken last month. The evening started out fine, great, even. We were all talking, laughing, catching up. Tyler had just finished building this custom dining table for some client and was showing us pictures on his phone. Carol was gushing about how talented he was, how he'd inherited Bill's craftsmanship skills. And Derek, bless him, was just sitting there smiling and nodding along, being his usual supportive self, even though I could tell it bothered him that Tyler was getting all the attention. It always bothered him when Tyler got praised. Classic younger brother syndrome. I was on my 3rd glass of wine by then, maybe 4th. I wasn't counting. The wine was flowing. I was feeling relaxed and happy and loose, and everything was fine. Until Carol turned to me and Derek and said, with this warm, affectionate smile, "You two make such a good pair. I'm so glad Derek found you." And I don't know what came over me. I really don't. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the fact that we'd just spent 20 minutes talking about how amazing Tyler was. Maybe it was years of unspoken thoughts finally bubbling to the surface. But I laughed. This loud, slightly too long laugh that made everyone look at me. And then I said it. Well, if I'm being totally honest, I think I picked the wrong son. The words hung in the air for a moment, just floating there, and I immediately knew I'd made a mistake. Not because what I said was so terrible, it was clearly a joke, obviously hyperbole, but because of the way everyone froze. Derek's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Tyler's eyes went wide. Bill looked up from his plate for the first time all evening. And Carol's face did this thing where her smile just slowly melted away, replaced by this expression I'd never seen before. Disappointment mixed with anger, mixed with something else I couldn't quite identify. But I was drunk and stupid, and instead of backtracking, instead of immediately saying, "Oh my God, I'm kidding," I doubled down. Because that's what I do when I'm nervous. I double down. I commit to the bit even when the bit is dying. "I mean, come on," I said, gesturing toward Tyler with my wine glass, some of it sloshing over the rim. "Look at him. He aged like fine wine. Meanwhile, Derek's over here with his dad bod and his receding hairline. I should have waited for the hot brother to be single." I laughed again, expecting someone else to laugh too, expecting Tyler to make a self-deprecating joke back, or Derek to roll his eyes and say something witty, or Carol to chuckle and tell me I was being silly. But nobody laughed. Nobody said anything. The silence was so thick I could feel it pressing against my skin. Derek was staring at me with this look on his face that I'd never seen before. His jaw was tight, his eyes were cold, and his hands were gripping his fork and knife so hard his knuckles were white. Tyler was looking down at his plate, clearly uncomfortable, probably wishing he was anywhere else. Bill had gone back to eating, deliberately avoiding eye contact with everyone. And Carol slowly, deliberately put down her fork. She picked up her napkin, dabbed at her mouth, and then looked directly at me with eyes that could cut glass. "Excuse me?" she said quietly, too quietly. I tried to laugh it off, tried to wave my hand dismissively like it was no big deal. Oh, relax, Carol. I'm joking. You guys are all so serious. It's just wine talk. Don't be so sensitive. But Derek was standing up now, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Did you really just say that? He asked, his voice shaking. Did you really just tell my entire family that you wished you'd married my brother instead of me? I didn't say married, I protested, even though I kind of had implied it. I said picked. It's different. And I was joking. Jesus Christ, can nobody take a joke anymore? Carol stood up too, her movements controlled and deliberate in a way that was somehow more frightening than if she'd yelled. I think, she said, her voice steady and cold, you two should go home. Now. Carol, come on, I started, but she cut me off. Now, she repeated, before I say something I'll regret. The car ride home was 15 minutes of pure, suffocating tension. Derek didn't say a word as we walked to the car, didn't say a word as he started the engine, didn't say a word as we pulled out of his parents' driveway. I kept trying to explain, kept trying to make him understand that I was just joking, that I'd had too much wine, that I didn't mean anything by it. Derek, seriously, you're being ridiculous. It was a joke. Nothing. I was drunk. You know how I get when I drink. I say stupid things. Nothing. Come on, don't give me the silent treatment. That's so immature. Finally, about 5 minutes from our house, he spoke. His voice was low, controlled, terrifying in its calmness. Why would you humiliate me like that, in front of my entire family? I didn't humiliate you, I shot back, defensive now. I made a joke. A harmless joke that you're all blowing completely out of proportion. You told my mother you wished you'd chosen my brother instead of me. I didn't say I wished. That's exactly what you said. His voice rose now, cracking slightly. You said you picked the wrong son. You said Tyler aged better. You said you should have waited for him to be single. In what universe is that a joke? In the universe where people have a sense of humor. I was yelling now too, because I was frustrated and embarrassed, and I didn't know how else to react. God, Derek, when did you become so sensitive? When did everyone become so fragile that you can't handle one little comment? He laughed then. This bitter, humorless laugh that made my stomach twist. One little comment, he repeated. Right, because that's all it was. Not years of you looking at Tyler at every family gathering. Not you constantly comparing me to other men. Not you mentioning your ex-boyfriend who was taller and more successful. Just one little comment. That's not fair. Fair. He turned to look at me briefly before returning his eyes to the road. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've spent 6 years trying to be enough for you while you've apparently been wishing you'd married someone else? Is it fair that you humiliated me in front of my mother, the woman who welcomed you into our family like you were her own daughter? I wasn't wishing. Yes, you were. He slammed his hand on the steering wheel, making me jump. You just said it. Out loud. In front of everyone. Well, maybe if you'd kept yourself in shape like Tyler instead of letting yourself go, I wouldn't have anything to joke about. The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them, and I immediately knew I'd made everything worse. Derek went completely silent again. But this time it was different. This time the silence felt final. Absolute. Like something had just broken that couldn't be fixed. We pulled into our driveway. He put the car in park. Sat there with his hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Get out, he said quietly. Derek, get out of the car and go inside. I got out, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. I'd pushed too far. I knew I'd pushed too far. But I was too proud, too stubborn, too invested in being right to apologize. I walked up to the front door, fumbling with my keys, expecting him to follow me so we could continue fighting inside where the neighbors couldn't hear. But he didn't follow me. He stayed in the car, engine still running, just sitting there, and that's when I saw headlights pulling up behind us. Carol's car. I stood on the front porch, keys in hand, watching as Carol got out of her car and walked straight up to Derek's window. He rolled it down. They talked for maybe 30 seconds, their voices too low for me to hear, and then Derek nodded and got out of the car. Carol walked toward me, her face set in an expression I'd never seen before. Determined, cold, final. "Open the door," she said. "Carol, I think we should all just cool down. Open the door." Something in her voice made me comply. I unlocked the door, and she walked in like she owned the place, Derek following silently behind her. "Where's your bedroom?" she asked. "What? Why, your bedroom. Where is it?" "Upstairs, first door on the left, but Carol—" She was already climbing the stairs, taking them two at a time with a determination that made my stomach drop. I looked at Derek, expecting him to explain, to tell his mother to calm down, to defend me. But he was just standing in the entryway, arms crossed, face completely expressionless. "Derek, what is happening?" He didn't answer. He just looked at me with eyes that had gone completely dead, all the love and warmth I'd grown accustomed to over 6 years completely absent. I followed Carol upstairs and found her in our bedroom, pulling my suitcases out of the closet. "What are you doing?" I shrieked, genuine panic setting in now. "Packing your things," she said calmly, opening the first suitcase on the bed. "You're leaving." "I'm what?" She opened my dresser drawer and started pulling out clothes, folding them with quick, efficient movements that suggested she'd done this before, maybe for Tyler's ex-girlfriends over the years. "Wait, stop, you can't do this." I tried to grab the clothes from her hands, but she gave me a look that stopped me cold. "I can, and I am. My son may be too much of a gentleman to throw you out tonight, but I'm not." She continued packing, moving to the closet now, pulling dresses off hangers. "You chose the wrong son? Fine. Go see if any man wants to deal with your disrespect." It was one joke. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face, mascara probably running. One stupid joke that I made when I was drunk. Carol stopped packing and turned to face me fully. It wasn't the joke, it was the truth behind it. You don't say things like that unless you've been thinking them. And you've been thinking them for a while, haven't you? No, Don't lie to me." She went back to packing. "I've seen the way you look at Tyler. I've heard you make little comments over the years about Derek's weight, his job, his hair. I've watched you constantly compare him to other men. I ignored it because I thought you loved my son despite his imperfections. But tonight you made it very clear that you don't." "That's not true. I love Derek." "No." She zipped up the first suitcase and opened the second one. "You settled for Derek, and tonight, after 3 glasses of wine, you admitted it to his entire family." Derek appeared in the doorway then, holding a box. He set it on the floor and started gathering things from my nightstand. My phone charger, my book, my jewelry box. "Derek, please," I begged, trying to grab his arm. "Please don't let her do this. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. The alcohol was talking." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made me want to die. "No," he said quietly. "The alcohol just let the truth slip out. The truth you've been hiding for years. That's not... Be honest with yourself for once." He put the items in the box. "You've never been happy with me. You've always wanted more. Someone taller, richer, more attractive. Someone like Tyler. Or your ex. Or literally anyone who isn't me. Derek, I've known it for years," he continued, his voice cracking slightly. "I've felt it every time you looked at me with disappointment. Every time you suggested I work out more. Every time you mentioned how successful your friends' husbands were. I just kept hoping that if I loved you enough, if I tried hard enough, eventually you'd actually want me. I do want you." "Liar." Carol's voice cut through like a knife. She'd finished packing the second suitcase and was now zipping it up. "If you wanted him, you wouldn't have humiliated him tonight. You wouldn't have told his family you chose the wrong son." We were in the middle of carrying my suitcases down the stairs. Carol handling one, Derek handling the other, me following uselessly behind them while crying and begging them to stop. When we heard a truck pull up outside, through the front window I could see Tyler's pickup in the driveway. "Oh God," I whispered. "No, no, no." Carol opened the front door, and Tyler got out of his truck carrying a toolbox. He'd apparently been at his workshop and had stopped by to return some tools he'd borrowed from Derek last month. He took one look at the scene, Carol with a suitcase, Derek with another suitcase, me standing there crying with mascara streaked down my face, and his expression shifted from confused to concerned. "What's going on?" he asked, setting down the toolbox. "She's leaving," Carol said flatly, walking past him to load the suitcase into Derek's car. "Leaving? Why? What happened?" Derek didn't say anything. He just walked past Tyler and loaded the second suitcase into the trunk. Tyler looked at me, expecting an explanation, and I couldn't find words. How do you explain this? How do you tell someone that you've just been kicked out of your house because you drunkenly told his mother you wished you'd married him instead of his brother? Carol answered for me. Her voice was cold, final, devastating. She said she chose the wrong son. Tyler's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, realization, shock, disgust. He turned to look at me, and the expression on his face made me feel like I was 2 inches tall. "You said what?" "I was drunk," I stammered. "I didn't mean it. It was a joke that came out wrong." "A joke." He said it like it was the most absurd thing he'd ever heard. "You told my mother, at her dinner table, that you wished you'd chosen me instead of Derek. And you think that's a joke?" "I was trying to be funny." "Funny?" His voice rose, angry now. "You think humiliating my little brother in front of our family is funny?" "Tyler, No." He held up his hand to stop me. No, I don't want to hear it." He turned to Derek, who was standing by the car with his arms crossed, looking like a ghost of himself. "I'm sorry, man. I'm so sorry you had to hear that." Derek nodded but didn't say anything. Tyler turned back to me, and the disgust in his eyes was like a physical blow. "You know what? You didn't choose the wrong son. You shouldn't have been in this family at all." He picked up his toolbox and headed back to his truck. "Derek deserves so much better than you." And just like that, he was gone. Drove away without looking back. The words hung in the air, echoing in my head. You shouldn't have been in this family at all. Carol went back inside to get the box of my things from the nightstand. She handed it to me without a word, then got in her own car and drove away, leaving me standing in the driveway with Derek. "Derek," I tried one more time, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please, don't do this. Let's go inside and talk about it. I'll apologize properly. I'll do whatever it takes. Please don't throw away 6 years over one stupid comment." He walked to the driver's side of the car, opened the door, then paused. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe he'd tell me to go inside, that we'd work through this, that everything would be okay. But then he said, "Get in the car. I'm taking you to your parents' house." "What? No, Derek, this is my home too." "It was your home. Now get in the car or I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing." He wasn't bluffing. I could see it in his eyes. So I got in the passenger seat, clutching the box of my things, feeling like a child being sent away for misbehaving. The drive to my parents' house was 25 minutes of silence. I tried a few more times to apologize, to explain, to make him understand, but he ignored every word. Just drove with both hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead, jaw clenched. When we pulled up to my childhood home, my parents were asleep, all the lights off except the porch light. Derek got out and started unloading my suitcases onto the sidewalk. I got out too, watching him, trying one last desperate attempt. "It was the alcohol talking." He stopped, his hands on the last suitcase, and finally looked at me. Really looked at me. "No," he said quietly. "It was the truth you've been hiding talking, the truth about what you really think of me, the truth about how you've been settling this whole time. The truth about how I was never good enough for you. That's not... Save it. He lifted the last suitcase out and set it on the sidewalk with the others. I don't want to hear any more lies tonight. I grabbed his arm, desperate, pathetic, but I didn't care anymore. Please don't leave me. I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you. Please. He looked down at my hand on his arm, then back up at my face, and for just a second, I saw something in his eyes. Pain, sadness, maybe even a flicker of the love that used to be there. But then it was gone, replaced by cold resolve. You joked about choosing the wrong son, he said, pulling his arm free. Tonight, I'm choosing the right decision. He got back in the car. I stood there on the sidewalk, surrounded by my hastily packed suitcases, watching through tears as my husband, drove away without looking back. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been staying with my parents, sleeping in my childhood bedroom surrounded by old posters and stuffed animals, feeling like my life has regressed 15 years. Derek won't return my calls, won't respond to my texts. I tried going to the house twice, but he'd changed the locks. I tried reaching out through mutual friends, but they've all taken his side. Even my own friends are being weird about it, like they think I'm in the wrong. I haven't heard from Carol or Tyler since that night. They've probably told the whole family by now. I'm probably the villain in all their stories. And the worst part, Derek's already filed for separation paperwork. His lawyer sent me a letter last week. We're not even divorced yet, and he's already moving on with his life like I never existed. But here's what I keep coming back to, what I keep trying to make sense of. I don't think I deserved all that. Yes, I made a joke that landed poorly. Yes, I was drunk and said something I shouldn't have said. But does that justify being thrown out of my own house, having my mother-in-law pack my bags, being driven to my parents' house like a misbehaving teenager? I mean, families joke about worse things all the time. People say inappropriate things when they're drunk all the time. It's normal. It's human. Was it really so terrible that I pointed out what everyone was already thinking? Tyler is objectively more attractive than Derek. That's just a fact. Facts aren't mean, they're just facts. And honestly, if Derek had kept himself in shape, if he'd made more of an effort to stay attractive, maybe I wouldn't have noticed the difference so much. Maybe I wouldn't have had that thought in the first place. So, in a way, isn't this partly his fault too? Okay, look, I know how this sounds. I know people reading this are going to think I'm a terrible person. I can already hear the judgment, feel the eye rolls, imagine the comments calling me shallow and cruel and toxic. But can I be honest for a second? Really, genuinely honest, in a way I haven't been this entire time. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that dinner. I replay it over and over in my head, watching it like a movie where I already know the ending. And I wonder, what if I'd just kept my mouth shut? What if I'd just smiled and said thank you when Carol complimented our relationship? What if I'd gone home that night, had sex with my husband, woken up the next morning, and continued living our perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable life? I'd still have my house, my marriage, my mother-in-law who liked me, my place in a family that had welcomed me with open arms. But I didn't keep my mouth shut. I said what I said, and I can't take it back no matter how much I want to. The thing is, I think I always knew, somewhere deep down, that I'd settled for Derek. Not that he's a bad person, he's not. He's kind and stable and exactly what you're supposed to want in a husband. But he's also safe, boring, the sensible choice instead of the exciting one. And maybe that's what came out that night. Maybe after 6 years of pretending I was happy with the sensible choice, after 6 years of watching Tyler be everything Derek wasn't, after 6 years of suppressing little thoughts and fantasies and what-ifs, the alcohol just loosened my tongue enough to let the truth slip out. But here's the thing. Everyone settles. Everyone makes practical choices in relationships. Everyone dates someone who maybe isn't their absolute ideal fantasy person, but who's good enough, who checks most of the boxes, who makes them happy most of the time. So, why am I being punished for admitting what everyone else is too afraid to say out loud? I've been thinking a lot about Carol, about how she reacted, about how she turned on me so quickly after years of treating me like family. And I keep coming back to this. She overreacted, massively overreacted. What kind of mother throws her daughter-in-law out of her house over one drunk comment? What kind of woman packs someone's bags and drives them away like they're trash that needs to be disposed of? A cruel one, that's what kind. And Derek could have stood up for me. He could have told his mother to back off, that we'd handle our own problems, that she didn't need to get involved in our marriage. But he didn't. He just stood there and let her do it. Let her pack my things and drive me away like I meant nothing. Like 6 years of marriage meant nothing. That's not love. That's not standing by your spouse. That's betrayal. So really, when you think about it, maybe they're the villains in this story. Not me. I made one mistake, one drunken comment at a family dinner. And they destroyed my entire life over it. How is that fair? How is that proportional? How is that anything other than cruel and vindictive and completely over the top? My mom keeps asking me what I'm going to do, whether I'm going to fight the separation, whether I want to try to fix things with Derek. And honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to show up at his door with flowers and apologies and promises to never drink again, to never make jokes like that again, to be the perfect wife he always deserved. But another part of me, the stubborn, proud part that got me into this mess in the first place, thinks, why should I? Why should I have to grovel and beg forgiveness for being honest? Why should I have to pretend I didn't notice that his brother is more attractive? Why should I have to lie about my thoughts and feelings just to make everyone else comfortable? Shouldn't marriage be about honesty? Shouldn't it be about accepting each other, flaws and imperfect thoughts and all? If Derek truly loved me, he would have been able to handle one stupid comment. He would have laughed it off, or talked to me about it privately later, or made a joke back at my expense to even the score. But he didn't. He kicked me out. With his mother's help. So maybe, just maybe, I'm better off without him. Without them. Without a family that turns on you the second you show any imperfection. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Maybe I'll meet someone better. Someone more like Tyler, actually. Someone who keeps himself in shape and has an interesting job and makes me feel excited instead of settled. Maybe the universe is telling me I was right that night. I did choose the wrong son, and now I'm free to make the right choice. But then, there are other nights, worse nights, when the bravado falls away and I'm just lying in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, crying into my pillow so my parents won't hear. And on those nights, I think about Derek's face when I said it. That moment when his expression changed from warm to cold, from loving to dead. That moment when I watched our entire relationship shatter in real time. I think about the way Carol looked at me when she packed my bags. Not angry, just disappointed, like I'd confirmed something she'd suspected all along. I think about Tyler's words, "You shouldn't have been in this family at all." And I think about the fact that I'm 32 years old, sleeping in my parents' house, with no husband, no home, and a divorce in my near future. And I wonder, what's wrong with me? Why do I say things that hurt people? Why do I make jokes that aren't actually jokes? Why do I compare and criticize and tear down the people who love me? Why wasn't Derek enough? He was kind. He was faithful. He loved me completely, unconditionally, even when I didn't deserve it. Why couldn't I just be happy with that? But then morning comes, and the sun comes up, and I push those thoughts away. I build my walls back up. I reconstruct my justifications, and my rationalizations, and my reasons why I'm not the villain here. Because if I admit that I am, if I admit that I destroyed my own marriage through cruelty and thoughtlessness and toxic behavior, then I have to face the fact that I'm alone because I deserve to be alone. And I'm not ready to face that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So here I am, 3 weeks later, still trying to make sense of it all. Still trying to figure out how I went from a happily married woman with a family who loved her to a single woman living in her childhood bedroom, facing divorce before she's even 35. And the conclusion I keep coming back to is this: I don't think I deserved what they did to me. Yes, I said something I shouldn't have said. But it was one comment, one joke, one moment of drunken honesty, and they treated it like I'd cheated on Derek, like I'd committed some unforgivable sin that could never be forgiven. That's not fair. That's not reasonable. That's not how families are supposed to work. Carol should have defended me, or at least stayed neutral. She shouldn't have turned on me so quickly. Shouldn't have packed my bags like I was some stranger who'd wandered into her son's life. Derek should have stood up for me, should have told his mother to back off, should have fought for our marriage instead of just giving up the second things got hard. Tyler should have minded his own business instead of making it worse with his judgmental comments. They all should have remembered that I'm human, that humans make mistakes, that marriage is supposed to be for better or worse, not just for better. But they didn't. They chose to punish me, to humiliate me, to throw me away like I never mattered. So really, when you think about it, they're the ones who failed, not me. I made one mistake. They made the choice to end everything over it. And if that makes me the villain in their story, then fine. Let them tell it that way. But in my story, I'm the victim, the one who was honest when everyone else was lying. The one who said out loud what everyone was thinking. The one who was punished for having the courage to speak the truth. And someday, maybe Derek will realize what he lost. Maybe he'll see that I wasn't so bad after all. Maybe he'll regret letting his mother drive me away instead of fighting for us. Or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll move on and find someone who thinks he's perfect just the way he is. Someone who never compares him to his brother or anyone else. Someone who's content with average and boring and safe. Good for him if he does. But that person was never going to be me. Because I deserve more than average. I deserve someone who makes me excited, who keeps himself in shape, who has ambition and charisma and presence. I deserve someone like, well, someone like the person I thought I was choosing when I chose Derek. Except I chose wrong. I said it that night, and I meant it, even if I shouldn't have said it out loud. I chose the wrong son, and now I'm paying for that choice in ways I never could have imagined. But at least I'm free now. Free to make the right choice next time, if there is a next time. God, I hope there's a next time. People keep asking me what I've learned from all this. My mom, my dad, my therapist. Yes, I started seeing a therapist because apparently everyone thinks there's something deeply wrong with me. And I never know how to answer that question. What have I learned? I've learned that people are quick to judge. That one mistake can erase years of being good. That loyalty means nothing when you say the wrong thing at the wrong time. I've learned that families aren't really families. They're just groups of people who are nice to you until you're not convenient anymore. I've learned that marriage isn't really forever. It's forever until you have 3 glasses of wine and admit a truth your husband didn't want to hear. I've learned that nobody actually wants honesty. They want pretty lies that make them feel good about themselves. But I don't think that's what my therapist wants me to say. I think she wants me to say, I've learned that my words have consequences, that I need to think before I speak, that comparing your husband to his brother is hurtful and wrong and toxic. And maybe those things are true. Maybe I should have thought before I spoke. Maybe I should have kept my observations to myself. But here's what bothers me. If you can't be honest with your partner, if you have to constantly police your thoughts and filter your words and pretend you don't notice things that are obvious to everyone, then what kind of relationship is that? Isn't that just performative? Isn't that just pretending? And isn't honesty supposed to be the foundation of a good relationship? So maybe the real lesson here isn't that I shouldn't have said what I said. Maybe the real lesson is that Derek and I were fundamentally incompatible. that he needed someone who thought he was perfect, and I needed someone I actually thought was perfect. And we were both trying to force something that was never going to work. Maybe the dinner that night wasn't the beginning of the end. Maybe it was just the moment when the end became obvious to everyone else the way it had been obvious to me for years.